This is Andi Purewal, Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I'm joined by trainer Shane McGuigan here in Manchester. Shane, firstly, how are you?
Good, thank you, mate. Yeah, haven't been in Manchester very long. Came up yesterday afternoon because I've been down working in London with Lawrence Okolie and Anthony Fowler and keeping the gym busy. Dan Dubois got a fight date, so everyone's ticking over down there. I had to finish that week as long as possible, and then brought myself up to Manchester. But we've got Adam and Hassan out tomorrow. They've weighed in. Josh Pritchard, my assistant, has been looking after the boys for a couple of days, and looking forward to it.
Talking about the boys, Hassan and Adam, look, how excited are you to see them back out next? And what should everybody be in store for those who haven't seen them yet? Yeah. And I've just heard you obviously having some conversation downstairs about the talent that they possess and how far they can go. What should everybody expect to see tomorrow night?
Well, look, they're babies of the game. Adam's 19 years of age, Hassan's 21, but they have bagfuls of potential. And at this stage of their career, they can not perform to their full capability because there's lots of variables between nerves, the occasion, with the occasion, fight week prep, all that sort of stuff. But I believe the two of them take a lot of this in their stride. So I'm really excited. I think Adam's got a guy that comes forward, Jordan Ellison. He comes forward, comes to have a go. He's been stopped a handful of times, but he's been stopped trying. And then so that's going to make it an entertaining fight. That means that Adam's going to have to create distance, have to create space, and he's got 6 rounds to do it. It's not like it's a little 4-round contest. So, we're not throwing him in deep, but we're putting him in with guys that are coming to fight him, and because I believe that's when he's going to look his best. Hassan's got MJ Hall, guy that's had plenty of fights, very rarely been stopped. I think he's only been stopped once again a handful of times, but he's had more losses and he's a bit more of a survivor, so it's going to be hard to prize his opponent open. Also a southpaw, his fight's very small, and Hassan's he's a big welterweight, so look, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we got 2 knockouts, but I think 2 wins is what we want.
You mentioned kind of the occasion itself for them boxing on what will be one of the biggest cards of the year, no matter who ends up fighting later this year. From an experience factor, how much have I enjoyed this week, being in and around so much media, so many people from the boxing world just coming to tune in to watch, and who will be there on fight night?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've really got to credit my brother Jake, who's got them on this card with Boxer, and obviously Ben Shalom, because they're pushing them. They know that they understand the value of these 2 kids. Got Amir Khan that's been carrying the flag for a long time, great ambassador for British boxing and for Pakistani boxing as well. So the boys are potentially going to inherit a lot of that fan base, especially if they go and put on good performances. And I think that was always the angle that we've been going at. So Boxer and Sky Sports and Jake and everyone's been working together. So has Ollie Ward, who's from First Access Sport as well. So we've managed to get them on this card, and I think it's a huge platform. So but they've sucked it up. They've really enjoyed the experience, and it's one of those ones where it's like in 5 years' time you guys could be there, and if you do it right, and you can end up there. So look, they're in the gym with Lawrence Okolie, who's a world champion. They're in the gym with other big time boxers, European champions, stuff like that as well. So they get a glimpse of that day to day, but this is another level because it's a pay-per-view card, and I've been involved with pay-per-views when it comes to Frampton Quigg, Hay Bellew, and George Eubank, but that was a ITV one. But we've been involved in big fights, but this has that air of that huge sort of fight week drama.
Obviously mentioning Amir Khan there, that headline event, him versus Khan-Brook. Shane, what is your thoughts? What's your breakdown of that fight? What do you expect to see?
Oh, I'm changing my mind all the time. Look, if I put a gun to my head, I think Khan-Brook will get him with inside 6 rounds. But I wouldn't even be surprised if Khan flashes him early, because he's so quick and we don't know how much that weight cut is taken out of Khan-Brook. But if it goes past 5 to 6 rounds, it's Amir Khan's fight, in my opinion, because he's busier and he doesn't really think. He doesn't think about his work sometimes. But even when he was fighting Saul Alvarez, and he's got more wear and tear on him since then, but he's prepped properly for this one. Even when he was fighting Alvarez, he was still picking up rounds because it's so hard to defend against, because he's just throwing so many punches and he's so fast. And I think if Kell can't time him early, then it will go points, and it will be an Amir Khan win. So I've literally sat on the fence, but as I said, gun to my head, I'll probably say, I think if Kell, which he will land within the first 4 or 5 rounds, I think he might, and he's a great finisher. But his timing and stuff like that is not what it used to be. So that's what makes it such a fascinating contest, because a few years ago we'd have said Brook does him, and then a few years before that we'd have said Amir Khan's probably at his peak, and Kell hadn't really had the Sean Porter win, he hadn't really burst onto the scene, so you would have favoured him. But 2 different weight divisions. Amir's optimal weight is 140 and Kell's was 147, so they're meeting at 149. At this stage in their career, it's definitely going to favour Amir Khan, because he's not having to kill himself down to the weight. So as you get older, you get weaker, your body gets more tired, your punch resistance goes down. So I wouldn't be surprised if either of them knocked each other out, but that's just what my head's at. I reckon it will probably go reasonably early, and it'll probably be Brook.
What did you make of seeing him on the scales earlier, and especially in Kell's case? He looked not just shredded, but he looked like even if he wanted to, he had nothing else that he could have lost on the scales.
He's always looked like that. He really has. The only times he's not looked that cut and that his skin is like paper. The only times he's not looked like that is when he's gone to 154. And as you get older, it's hard to get your body down lean. You see all these bodybuilders and stuff. When they get in their mid-30s, their conditioning starts going down. So credit to him and Domingo for getting him in that shape. He's unbelievable shape. Credit to also Bomac and Amir Khan for getting in that shape, because that's the best shape we've seen him in a long time. But when Amir Khan gets lean, he gets vulnerable. And like when he moved to the wild card, he looked a bit fleshy. You could see he didn't have the whole 6-pack abs, but he was able to go 12 rounds with Marcus Maidana. And that's the thing about knowing your fighters. Over time, you know them. If they got no reserve, they're getting fragile because they're almost too lean, and that's just knowing your fighter, working with them for a period of time, monitoring their weight on monitoring their body fat, monitoring their weight, and then getting to know where they're performing their best. Like George Groves looked leaner when he boxed Badu Jack than he did versus Chudinov, or than he did versus Eubank Jr. But getting him too light took his punch resistance down just a fraction and took his power down a fraction. So we didn't try and get him body beautiful. We made sure that he was that he had a little bit more reserve on him. So Bomax, this is his first fight with Amir, so we'll see how it pans out.
Just a few more questions from me, Shane, before I let you go. I just want to go back to last weekend, Ellie Scotney's victory. What were your thoughts on the win? Because when I was looking over social media, a lot of people thought a draw might have been a fair result. Do you understand why people looked at it, especially with the point deduction?
Yeah, well, first off, Steve Gray had no right, in my opinion, to take that point off, because the girl was using her head the whole time, and he was warning her. He wasn't warning Ellie for holding. He was warning the girl for using her head, and then next thing you know, he's taking a point off Ellie for holding. Look, I had it 7-3, and from ringside, everyone had her winning, because if you actually... It's not that the DAZN cameras were wrong. I mean, I watched it back and I muted it because I just thought, I'm going to sit there and watch it. And I personally like the cleanest punches. If you look at Katie Taylor versus the girl that she boxed twice, Purewal, yeah. I mean, it was a similar thing. She's running in, throwing loads of punches. Katie Taylor's trying to create distance and trying to hit with a cleaner shot. So it's like, what are you favouring? Are you favouring the person that's pushing the fight, or the cleaner punches and the more boxing? Which was a bit like that last Saturday. I mean, I had it 7-3. I genuinely don't see how people could have thought it was a robbery or even a draw. Maybe, the fact that they said with a point off, which, as I said, it was a bit harsh. I don't understand Steve. Steve's normally fair and straight with that sort of stuff. And I think if it hadn't had a point deduction on last, nobody would be calling robbery. But look, it was a unanimous. you can't get 3 corrupt judges. You might get 1 or 2, but you don't get 3, right? So, and the scores were equal. So whatever the judges were seeing is what I was seeing, and whatever the commentary was seeing was. I don't think they sat on the fence. Do you know what I mean? They were just saying, he's throwing lots of punches here. Oh, that was a big shot, and Ellie's blocked it and come back with a few. But they weren't actually. They're just sitting up there on the fence, not actually committing to any rounds. So I don't know how they had it, because they don't even know how they had it. But it was, I think us as spectators, there was quite a few fights on that card that were close, and there was a lot of unanimous decisions. So I understand that. Felix Cash fight was wide, but he was dropped twice or whatever. I think he had a point deducted as well. So, Ellie had a point deducted. It was a reasonably competitive fight. And Ryder versus Jacobs was arguable. Like, you can argue the scorecards basically. So from their standpoint, they'll just go, oh well, all the away fighters lost. But that's not the way it worked. That's not the way it worked. And Ellie put on. She's better than that, and she stepped up to 8 rounds, and she wants to step up to 10 rounders. If she boxed that girl 10 times, she beats her 10 times. But every single time she'll box her, she'll get better and figure her out more. But she's 23 years of age with 4 fights, and she's just won her title over 10 rounds. It's a big achievement. So we can't detract from that. It's, look at what you've done. Yes, you're better than that, and you will show it. It's hard to show it when people just put their head down and throw punches. And if you're looking at work rate, she wasn't working enough, but she was blocking. She never, if you look at the punches that actually landed on her, there was no real clean punches until the body shot, and she was landing the whole way through the fight with jabs, with left hooks, with right hands. She was walking on a shot. So you got to score the clean punches. And if you're just going for attrition, then that's going to detract from female boxing, because they don't really carry as much power. So if you're just saying, all right, well, work rate wins you fights, it's just going to become like 4,000 punches, and there's going to be no technique towards it, and just windmilling, and it's not going to be actually beneficial until they change it to 8 threes or 10 threes. So, I was actually happy with her performance until around the 8th round, and then the 9th round and 10th round she finished strong, so she finished well. But up until then, she was boxing really well. She just lost concentration a little bit down the stretch. But look, that's her first time doing 10, and we'll go again.
Right, from Elliot on to next week, and obviously Lawrence Coley and Anthony Fowler on the same bill. Lawrence getting ready to defend his WBO title. Just touch on both those. How are they both looking ahead of their bouts next weekend?
Yeah, well, we'll start with Fowler, because he'll be on first. He's looking good. I mean, he's back in the gym. He's had a long layoff. Don't know what weight he got up to, but he's now his weight's settled. He's going to do middleweight. I think it would be a lot more of a comfortable weight division for him. I don't think his body's going to change much. He's just not cutting as much the last 2 weeks. And I think that cut for a guy that's nearly a 6-foot lad going down to 11 stone. He's been 69 kilos since he was 15, 16 years of age. It's been a long slog keeping him at that weight. But sometimes you have to take a loss, and you have to feel massively out of your comfort zone to change. Because a lot of those fights that we had for Taya, people like that, were always around 11-2, 11-3, and that last 2 pounds, when you're that lean and when you're that down on the weight, it's just can really affect you. You can't, you've got 36 hours, but it's just not enough. So look, he's a guy that's just massively determined. He's been looking good in the gym. He's always looked good in his gym. He had a fantastic camp for Liam Smith. He really did. He had quality sparring. He was performing really well, and but that just shows you the last week of the fight can change your performance. So, we've addressed that. We're going to move him up to middleweight. This one's at 164, I think it is, 163, 164. He could do 160, but we're just going to ease him into it. But look, we're going to target some titles, whether it's British or European title. Felix Cassius just vacated it. The European title got won a couple of months back. So we've got our sights set on that level before we move on to to step him up again.
And with Lawrence Okolie, how's he looking ahead of the Cieslak fight?
Yeah, look, Cieslak is he's only had one loss to Makabu, and I actually thought that was a very close fight. It was a unanimous decision to Makabu, but could have gone either way in my opinion. And he's a good technical boxer. I don't think he's going to go and try and stick it on Lawrence and try and fight him in close. I think he'll try and do it from distance. We've had David Nico, who's Olympic bronze medalist, down sparring for a good few weeks. I think it's like 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Paired up with Chris Billam-Smith, who's the former British and he's Commonwealth and European champion, so and ranked #1 in the IBF. So he couldn't have had a better prep when it comes to sparring. His weight's good, everything's great. He's looking really good. And look, one thing I know about Lawrence is he can do the whole process. He can do it, and he's just loves it. He lives for it. But what's worrying is the fact that the O2 Arena's got half of his thing blown off. So I haven't even spoke to Eddie or Frank Smith today. But I don't know if that's still going to go ahead. I think hopefully it will.
That was going to be a follow-up. Have you got any idea as to what you actually... Is there a reserve or is there anything like that?
I think we might have to go back to Eddie's back garden, or maybe we'll just go in the matchroom at HQ. We'll just go in the lounge or something. Do you know what I mean? Back in the old days, just have a little fight up.
Hopefully the show can go ahead next week, Shane. One final one, I'll just get your thoughts on, obviously, the day before Lawrence fights your old charge, Josh Taylor faces Jack Catterall. Just get your take on that fight.
Yeah, look, there's levels to this game, and Josh Taylor's a phenomenal fighter. He's proven. That's why we moved him so quick. I remember him having his 7th fight against Dave Ryan. He was a world champion in 14 fights. We unified against Prograis in 16 fights. He's then gone on to become undisputed. The Josh Taylor that I know, this shouldn't last 6 rounds. So let's hope that's the case. Jack Catterall, I really believe his best days were with Lee Beard. I don't know what went on then, but he shouldn't have gone to Jamie Moore, because ever since he's done that, he was a real force. When he knocked out Tom Stalker, he looked the part. And ever since then, he's just, the Hara Davies fight, he looked a bit cagey, and he's just looked a little bit off the mark. So whether that's struggling for motivation or not training correctly, not training at the right intensity or something like that, I don't know. But he's a very good fighter. So if it was Josh, you can't underestimate that, because he is a very good, talented fighter. But I'm not sure if he has the right mindset to be able to. I think it looks like he's already beaten before he's in there. But look, one of those fights, anything can happen. But I would go with Josh Taylor to stop him mid to 6 to 8.
Right, Shane, we'll leave that there and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening and get set up for tomorrow night. It's a pleasure to see you as always. I'm sure you're probably sick of me now because you've seen me like 3 weeks on my bounce, but like I say, it's always good. Thank you for speaking to me in Boxing Social.
Cheers, Andy. I'm sure we'll catch up again next week.
Well, tomorrow night.
Yeah, and then again next week.